What I'm about to tell you happened on a cold December night. The St. Maria Hospital loomed like a dark colossus against the night sky. Sarah pulled her coat tighter around herself as she stepped through the heavy entrance door. It was her first night shift as a guard, and already something felt different. The emergency lighting cast a sickly, greenish glow through the endless corridors. Her footsteps echoed off the tiled walls. A lonely echo in the silence. Just 4 floors to check, she muttered to herself. Nothing special. But as she spoke those words, the lighting in the hallway before her flickered. Once. Twice. Sarah froze. Was that a squeaking sound? Like a wheelchair being slowly pushed across linoleum? Sarah looked down the corridor, but there was nothing. Only shadows lurking in the corners. She forced herself to move forward, past abandoned nurse stations and empty treatment rooms. Her flashlight cast dancing shadows on the walls. Station 3A, the old psychiatric ward, sealed for years. The sound of falling papers made her jump. Patient files scattered across the floor, as if someone had just dropped them. Impossible. This part of the hospital had been sealed for years. With trembling hands, she picked up one of the files. Yellowed paper, faded writing. 1952 marked in the corner. Sarah turned the first page and her heart skipped a beat. A black and white photograph showed a man with empty eyes. Below it, read in ornate handwriting, Patient 302, warning, extreme caution required. Her flashlight died. Darkness swallowed her. Then she heard it. Footsteps, heavy, shuffling footsteps approaching from behind. Sarah dared not turn around. The footsteps came closer, closer, until they were right behind her. Then, silence. A silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. An ice-cold hand touched her shoulder. With shaking hands, she opened Patient 302's file. The aged paper crackled ominously in the silence. Patient exhibits abnormal behavior during night hours, she read. Other patients report nocturnal visits, claim he stands at their beds watching them sleep. Impossible, as Patient 302 is in isolation. Sarah froze. Laughter echoed through the halls. Children's laughter from the old children's ward, 3 floors above. Impossible. That section had been sealed since the Great Fire of 1963. She forced herself to keep reading. Patient 302 speaks of the children, says they call to him, but there are no children in his ward. With her heart pounding, Sarah walked down the dark corridor towards the stairwell. The sound had definitely come from above. The metal stairs creaked under her steps as she climbed. 3rd floor, the children's ward. The air suddenly smelled of burnt wood and something else, something sweet and sickening. The door to the children's ward stood ajar, though it should have been locked for decades. In the weak beam of her flashlight, Sarah saw something on the wall. Children's drawings, fresh children's drawings. She illuminated the first drawing. A black stick figure, unnaturally tall, stood over sleeping children. Its eyes were colored red. In childish handwriting beneath, "He comes every night." The next drawing showed the same man, this time leading children away by the hand. Behind them, a burning building, the date in the corner, 1963. Sarah's hand trembled as she illuminated the last drawing. Her heart stopped. The picture showed herself, looking at the drawings, and behind her, a dark figure. Slowly, ever so slowly, she turned around. In the doorway stood a tall, gaunt figure, Patient 302. But that was impossible. He should be long dead. His eyes glowed red in the darkness. "The children have been waiting for you, Sarah," he said with a voice like breaking glass. "They remember you. You were here too back then, in the fire." Sarah's head spun. Memories long suppressed came flooding back. The fire, the screams, Patient 302 saving the children. "But that's impossible," she stammered. "That was 60 years ago. I'm only..." She pulled out her ID badge. The photo on it faded before her eyes, grew older, crumbled to dust. "Time means nothing in this place," said patient 302. His figure flickered like old film footage. You come here every night, Sarah, for 60 years, searching for answers. Sarah crawled to the patient files. With trembling hands, she flipped through the pages until she found her own file. Sarah Matthews, age 8, sole survivor of the 1963 fire, deceased 1973 through self-admission to psychiatric ward, patient 302's old room. No. Sarah's voice broke. This can't be. She lifted her head and saw herself in the mirror at the end of the hall. Her face was burned, disfigured. She wore an old hospital gown from 1973. You never left, Sarah. Patient 302's voice was almost compassionate. You couldn't leave the other children behind, so you kept coming back, again and again. The walls around them began to flicker, shifting between modern and burned, new and old. Time itself seemed to unravel. But this time is different, whispered patient 302. This time you remember, and now. He stretched out his bony hand. It's time to set us all free. Sarah stood up, her legs trembling. The hospital walls now pulsed like a living organism. In every window she saw children's faces watching her. All these years. Zrania, her voice cracked. I was the one keeping them here. My guilt, my memories. Patient 302 nodded slowly. Your fear gave this place power. Your guilt kept us all here. Sarah walked to the window. In the glass, she saw not her reflection but herself as an 8-year-old girl, frightened, alone, surviving. It's time to let go, she whispered. The children's drawings on the walls began to glow, as if burning from within. We can all leave, said patient 302, but you must show us the way. Sarah closed her eyes. Around her, the ghosts of the children appeared, all in hospital gowns from 1963. They were smiling. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I kept you here. The walls of the hospital began to fade like morning mist. Patient 302's figure became transparent. Time to go home, he said softly. Sarah opened her eyes. She was the little girl again, but this time she wasn't afraid anymore. Hand in hand with the other children, she walked through the dissolving walls of the hospital, into the light, into freedom. The next morning, they found the old saint. Maria Hospital completely collapsed. Among the ruins lay a single children's drawing. It showed smiling children walking hand in hand into a bright sky. Next to it, in childish handwriting, sometimes we must face our ghosts to finally let them go. The drawing faded in the morning light until only blank paper remained. And if you hear children's laughter at night, remember, not all ghosts want to scare you. Some just want to go home. Or was it all just a story?